All right, Karen.
Yes.
Pop quiz.
Oh boy.
Today's guest is diving into a topic that we have never covered on the show before. Want to guess?
No.
You don't want to guess?
I need more hints.
Just throw me a guess. Something we've never covered before.
That's the thing.
Okay.
We always learn about things we didn't know existed. So how can I guess?
I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
It's not crystal grids.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not galactic soul origins either.
Okay.
No. And no, we're not decoding ancient Lemurian light codes this week either.
All right. None of those were my guesses.
No. I'm shocked. All right, try this. What if something as small as a speck of dust could open the doors to emotional healing, spiritual alignment, and divine connection?
Ooh, that just reminded me of The Little Prince. Remember that movie?
It's
And he goes,
actually
like, to this
a
little-
book that I used to love
Well,
when I was a kid.
I saw
Yeah.
the movie when I was a
Yeah.
little
Well, okay.
That would be cool, though.
Okay, ready? Here's
We got a lot of dust in the house.
well, here's a bigger hint, right? It involves mushrooms,
Okay.
but not the kind you saute with garlic.
Okay. I didn't think so.
All right. We are finally talking about microdosing tiny amounts of psychedelics that can lead to big breakthroughs in healing, self-discovery, and maybe even less road rage during that pesky Mercury retrograde thing that goes on, right? These are tiny doses of earth-grown psychedelics that are helping people remember who they truly are.
Wow.
Yeah, our guest is the founder of Microdosing for Healing, and she's built an entire global community to help people ease into this powerful practice without the need for tie-dye or starting a drum circle.
Do you think it could help you remember to take the trash out?
We can ask her that. Okay, guys, get ready because your spirit guides might just be whispering, it's time.
It's time.
The Skeptic Metaphysicians starts now.
My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and
we
Scully,
both want to believe.
so we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something
Anything.
that will prove that there's something beyond this physical.
Three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic
Skeptic
Metaphysicians.
Hey there, I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
And welcome back to an eye-opening, mind-expanding episode of the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Today's guest is a trailblazer in the conscious use of sacred plant medicine. Kayse Gehret is a founder of Microdosing for Healing, a global community and immersive education platform that's dedicated to introducing the practice of microdosing in an intentional, grounded, and heart-centered way. We're not talking about a party drug here, right? Now, since 2020, she's guided thousands of seekers from curious beginners to spiritual explorers through the powerful intersection of earth medicine, emotional healing, and personal transformation. Through her community, immersive programs, and her podcast, Kayse helps demystify psychedelic practice and reconnect us to ancient healing wisdom that's as relevant today as ever. So get ready to journey inward because this conversation might just change your perspective one microdose at a time. Welcome to the show, Kayse Gehret. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're happy to have you here.
I'm especially excited because this is a topic that I really wanted to dive into for a long time, but we've not had the opportunity. We've not found the right person to talk through it with you. So with you on the show, now we have the opportunity because, truth be told, we are clueless about this, right? We know about psilocybin, we know about ayahuasca, we know about all that kind of stuff, but microdosing is a world that we've been curious about, but scared about at the same time too, right? Because we don't want to trip per se, but we've heard so many great things about it. So can you explain to us just what exactly are we talking about when we say microdosing?
Absolutely. And first of all, you are my people. I was you. That's everybody I work with is like, do I have to trip? I'm kind of curious and I'm drawn, but I'm afraid to kind of go on a psychedelic journey. So absolutely. So microdosing is taking the small subperceptual dose. It's usually about 1/10 the dose of what a high dose journey would be. And so while you're going to feel definite benefits and effects, you're not going to feel altered and trippy in any way. That's the number one thing. A lot of people I work with, they're like, I am running a company. I have a bunch of kids. I can't be off my game ever.
Right.
Like, I mean, I have to be on all the time. And quickly when people start microdosing, with mushrooms, they realize they're not off their game. They're actually more on their game than they have ever been. So it's very much the opposite of, say, like an alcohol experience, if you will, that kind of dulls you and takes you outside of yourself. Microdosing kind of brings you back more into yourself and your instincts.
Gotcha. So you're not losing control at all, like with alcohol or any other type of drug. Actually, it's actually giving you more control.
Yes.
Because you're more
Strangely.
connected.
You're more connected, you're more intuitive, you're more articulate, you're more focused, you're almost better at most things.
So you're not having any of that like throwing up and just blacking out or anything like that?
No, certainly not.
Okay. No hangover the next day?
Nope.
Okay.
All right.
Actually, most people, the vast majority of people I have worked with have actually stopped drinking almost nearly, and some altogether.
Oh, wow.
Why? I mean, because I didn't mean it to sound like that. That sounded really weird. That sounded bad. No, I don't mean it like that. I'm just saying like
The true
like
story.
when we go out for a drink, it's a social thing. It's how would microdosing replace that?
Great question. So as soon as I started during 2020, 2021, I was in California at the time. We were locked down for ages there. And so a lot of people in my initial groups were coming with the intention, among other things, they said, I've been kind of hitting the wine a little too hard here in lockdown.
Gotcha.
Just right. And so what they found was when they started microdosing, though, they would, a few weeks, months later, they would go, wow, I haven't had a drink. Like I just kind of stopped effortlessly drinking, or they moved from drinking 4 or 5 times a week to once or twice a month when they went out to dinner to enjoy a great meal or a special occasion. They didn't need the social lubricant of alcohol. They didn't need the relaxation and the sedation of alcohol, nor did they need the escape as much anymore. So you can drink, absolutely. But I find now that I've witnessed so many people, I think what happens is mushrooms have a very high, bright resonance. Like people practice, they get lighter, they get more radiant, they look younger, they feel better, and it's this cascading effect.
You just won Karen over.
Younger? 'Cause I'm like,
She sold. Send us some.
I'll take the whole box.
I get that reaction a lot. And alcohol is actually really aging. It's very dense. It kind of brings you down. Mm-hmm. And so it feels good at the time. But a lot of people find as they get back in touch with their body and their own energy, and I'll have a drink of a glass of wine once in a while because I love wine, but I'll feel it in my body for the next few days. So I still love it once in a while, but to drink, several times a week, a lot of people find that they just let it go very easily.
So now, are they replacing the alcohol with the microdosing, or is it just you microdose for a little while and then then you stop and never really care for alcohol
It just
again?
kind of happens naturally. It's interesting. They lose, it's just kind of effortless. But the friction, when there is a friction, it becomes alcohol was such a part of their social life. Right. They're like, it's so strange to be out at a dinner party or a cocktail party and walk around with my sparkling water.
Right.
But they don't find the need to have like a social lubricant anymore. It just kind of the social conditioning of dating and not drinking, or going to dinner
You're like,
parties and
what's
not
wrong?
drinking.
Right.
Exactly.
Why are you not drinking?
Exactly. Are you alcoholic?
Yeah. In fact, it reminds me when we first met.
Why?
You were on a no alcohol kick for a while.
Oh.
And I was like, uh-oh. Red flag. Red flag.
That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but I guess what I'm asking is alcohol replaced with mushrooms? Or like, do you have to continually do the microdosing?
Oh, great question. Great question. Yes. This is another big thing that it's very mind bending for people to get their head around because we're so steeped in pharmaceutical culture. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people think that especially if they're on medications now and they're microdosing to say going off their antidepressants and they're going to microdose instead, it bends people's minds because the goal of microdosing is to actually not to need to microdose anymore. It's not to need anything anymore. So you only do it for as long as you feel is appropriate. But when you stop microdosing, it's like you don't give up all of the benefits that you gained. So, for example, to use myself as an example, I had a grand mal seizure disorder that I had since I was a kid. I was medicated for it with heavy pharmaceuticals. never quite got at what was underneath. You know, they never really diagnosed me with anything. And I did a lot of different healing modalities in my life, but that helped them, but they never completely went away. When I started microdosing mushrooms, they stopped immediately. And I've never had one since. And after a while, when I decided to stop microdosing, I was really curious if they would come back. And they never did.
They never came back.
Wow.
No. And so microdosing, it's really not the mushrooms that are doing something to you. It's the mushrooms are tapping into your innate healing potential, helping you reset your nervous system. And so a whole host of symptoms heal, and you don't need to keep relying on the mushrooms to maintain.
So when you did this, did you do it every day? You microdosed every day for how long?
Yes. So when I was first starting out, I didn't know anybody that was doing it other than the person that introduced me to it. And so we were just kind of like winging it. And at the time, there was kind of one book that mentioned it briefly. Once Dr. James Fadiman had mentioned it in his book, Psychedelic Explorer's Guide. There was a little bit about microdosing. And so I just kind of winged it. And I was practicing 5 days a week. So I would dose 5 days a week and take 2 days off. And so that's a really common one for our community. Typically starts at 4 or 5 days a week dosing when they first start out.
Gotcha.
And then for how many weeks would you say you did it?
We start for 6 weeks. And it's so interesting. Like some people have so many benefits come in the first 6 weeks. They have just an amazing, incredible, really transformative experience that's just jam-packed in the first 6 weeks. Other people, it takes a bit longer. And it'll take really 3 to 4 months to kind of really get connected with the medicine, feel benefits.
Right.
That's about the standard. And then we kind of reassess, take a break, and see if they want to continue or not.
So we're not talking years. We're talking months.
Oh, no.
That's amazing.
Oh, wow. So you talk about how it taps you into your own healing. So asking for a friend. Could this help?
Hi, I'm the friend.
Well, could this help with symptoms of perimenopause or menopause?
Hi, I'm not the friend.
That is the most popular question right now. I get
Really?
that so many times a week. Yes, because so many women are, one, talking about it more. You know,
Yes,
menopause
finally.
is very in. It's very in right now. And so more people feel comfortable talking about it. And so they're coming and saying, I'm having all of these symptoms. What is hormones? And what can mushrooms help? Right? Where do I need hormone therapy and where can mushrooms help? So there's a whole host of things, particularly mood and inflammation. Like we can get a lot of weird inflammation in perimenopause, like muscle aches, frozen shoulder, body aches, chronic fatigue, that mushrooms can support a lot, and also mood swings.
Check.
Mood swings too.
Well, the mood swings aren't. That's the only thing that my friend
No,
hasn't
not
complained about mood swings,
no,
but everything else.
Right. Body aches, fatigue, muscle aches. Yeah. Okay.
Well, and just an aside, I think the reason it's so popular now is because the women that are currently going through it are like the Gen Xers. And, we were loud. So loud then, still loud now.
I was just going to say, still loud,
Still
not
loud.
we're loud, right? I don't have FOMO at all. Now, okay, so let's talk about men stuff. Like
Menopause.
So a perfect example. If a man has prostate issues or
Asking for a friend?
asking for a friend, right? Could something like this be a benefit to that? High blood pressure, things like that.
I would say the number one thing I hear from men, and it's a whole array of things, but consistently, is men sleep better. That's the big one.
Okay,
Because
I'm
a
in.
lot of
So is your friend, right?
a lot of men,
my friend.
a lot of men don't feel anxiety the way women feel anxiety. It just manifests differently. And for a lot of men, they're very anxious, but they're not aware of it because it comes out in their sleep. Is highly disordered. So they can't get deep sleep. They can't get REM sleep. They don't dream. And they're also waking up through the night. When you start microdosing, it resets your nervous system. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I slept more than 7 hours. I'm having dreams. And so a lot of men are just really stoked to sleep again. And they get very, very fascinated by the fact that they're dreaming again for the first time since they were kids.
I would love to sleep.
I would love for you to sleep.
That's a great point though, because I feel the anxiety. I know that when I wake up all like, because I'm all tensed up from the anxiety and things like that. So, okay, getting closer to being like on board. So
the saying, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Are there any negative side effects or things that would be maybe a deterrent for someone who's interested in trying this?
That's a great question. And it is like, it's so broad. The benefits are so broad. It is kind of like, who is this not for? Who is this not for? The main contraindication that I have seen is if somebody is in kind of pinned at the top of their emotional spectrum. So, for example, they just lost a loved one and they're in deep grief, or a spouse just left them and they're kind of in a peak phase of emotionality. Sometimes mushrooms can often bring things up and out that are ready to be healed in a really powerful, beautiful way. But we have to make sure we're resourced and have the network and support, and we're resourced enough within ourselves to handle the uprise in emotional capacity. And so if someone is kind of in the throes of deep grief, I'll oftentimes like start with breath work, start with meditation, start with yoga, start with just getting out in the morning sun, connecting with nature. And then once you're kind of in a place where you can hold emotion again, then we'll start microdosing. But it's really people's ability to feel is one of the gauges.
This would be something we should never do together at the same time, because we are both so emotional, feely people. If anything goes awry,
It might actually be good. I don't know.
send our daughter to camp and then try.
It's actually most uncomfortable for people who can't feel.
Oh,
Who
okay.
are
Then we're
very,
good.
very repressed because they don't know, like they've never really allowed themselves to cry. They've never really allowed themselves to feel discomfort or anger. People who are very emotional are actually kind of better at it because you're fluent. You're fluent with your emotional
We
world.
would be genius level.
Genius level.
All right. Well, I do want to dive into the spiritual aspects of it. But before we do that, one more question that I have, because I have a friend who would be very interested in this answer. If someone's taking medications currently, is there anything that would prevent that person from microdosing while they're on the medication?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Is the answer.
Okay.
Yes. So pharmaceuticals are not impossible, but they're another wriggle and a variable. So we've had tons and tons of experience. We've always had people in our community on different pharmaceuticals, and we have professional support in our community and pharmacists who are trained both in Western pharma and are trained in psychedelics, who can offer consultation. And I'd love to give a little shout out to my colleague, Kristen Spear. She's a pharmacologist. She's amazing, and she just created this amazing tool that people can go in and put their medications and their supplements and cross-check it with psilocybin and get a report for just a few bucks against any medication they're on. It's kind of a self-help kind of thing.
Wow.
And that's at psychedelicinteraction.com.
Well, that's fantastic.
Great.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, because that was a big question of mine. Because my friend is very on a lot of medication, and you just never know, right? So I'm interested to find out how that works.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the spiritual. This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians after all, right? In the show, a lot of the people who are listening know about psilocybin as a way to broaden their spiritual growth, right? How does microdosing compare to taking a goddess level type of dose, for example?
It's all a continuum in my experience. So a lot of people who are familiar with psychedelic journeys, who were kind of the first wave of psychedelics back in the 50s and 60s, there wasn't a such thing as microdosing, right? But if we dial back to antiquity, if we dial back to indigenous cultures, they all had a form of microdosing in the form of dietas, in the form of purification processes to get to the high dose experience. They had a rite of passage to go with that. We're just lacking that in our culture, especially in America. We want to go right. Yeah. We go big right from the start. So microdosing really serves as this beautiful introduction to connecting with the medicine. It's really gentle, it's soft, but you can start to understand how the medicine is going to speak to you and how spirit is going to speak to you, the spirit of the medicine. And so, for example, some people are very mental people. They'll automatically notice shifts in their thinking. They're like, I'm just connecting the dots more. I'm seeing things from a different perspective. I'm having beautiful ideas that I didn't expect. Other people, it's very somatic, and the medicine works through their body and really expands their body. There's a lot of healing, physical health and healing. Other people, it's very spiritual and mystical from the start. they'll start microdosing and nature just comes alive. There's birds landing near them. Their pets can't get enough of them. The animal world just doesn't seem to have fear for them anymore. Yeah. And so it's really fascinating to hold space for especially groups of people because the medicine is so unique to each person. And it gives me signs and clues in ultimately if they do journey down the road, how the medicine is going to work with them in a high dose experience. Are they going to have a really mystical experience or is it going to be a more somatic physical experience?
Okay. So then you would then, it sounds like, you would then recommend beginning microdosing with an eye towards taking a full-on journey at some point in the future, because that's what's going to really open up your spiritual world, is that higher dosage. So this prepares you for that imminent journey that you might be taking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, some people just microdose and that's enough for them. Particularly, I work with a lot of people who are clairvoyants and psychics, and they're already really open. They have had meditation and practices for 40, contemplative practices for 40 years. They can really go pretty far with just microdosing. But even skeptics and people who never thought they would do a journey, after they microdose for a while, they really come to trust the experience and they're drawn. That was totally me. I thought I would never do a psychedelic journey, but after I had such a beautiful experience with microdosing, I was like, all right, maybe a little higher, maybe a little higher, a little higher.
Right.
And that was when I had big spiritual expansions, was when I started to work at higher levels.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So my only experience with psilocybin was in college.
Mm-hmm.
And those trips, that's not really meant for spiritual expansion. That's meant for, like I mentioned earlier, the party drug, right? And I puked my guts out. So is there a way to do this without?
Great question. Yes. There is. I mean, most people get sick, get nauseous due to the chitin in the actual mushroom. So some people, especially some people, lack a digestive enzyme that can break down the mushroom to get to the psilocybin to convert to psilocin. So there's ways around that for people who get really, really nauseous from mushroom, the chitin in the mushroom. You can just use a different formulation of psilocin or a finished medicine, meaning like a chocolate or a chew or something like that.
They have chocolate mushrooms now?
Oh, they do. They have mushroom everything.
Wow.
Well, I mean, we've had mushroom tea, but it's not the magic mushroom type.
Right.
It was
it's just like
lion's mane or whatever.
Turkey tail, lion's mane.
Right.
And you could take psilocybin into tea also.
Okay, because I think we put it on a pizza or something and ate the pizza. Right?
As you do in college.
Right, exactly. I think a friend of mine actually took it out of the bag and just started chewing it. And I tried it, like it was a pungent taste. It was really difficult. So we put it on pizza just so we didn't have to taste it. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I heard that's what people do. I would never do anything illegal. Absolutely not. Never.
So that brings up a question.
That was my next question. Yes. Go ahead.
So the legality of it, is this something that is it legal? Is microdosing legal? Is going on a bigger spiritual journey with the full dosing legal?
It depends where you are, which is so human of us to draw little lines on the earth and go, you can do it here, but you can't do it here, and you can do it here. But this is where we are in our culture. So a couple states so in Colorado and Oregon have passed legislation statewide that it is legal through legalized models and decriminalized. Other cities around the country have decriminalized in those cities. It's happening. It's very mushroomy, actually, the way it's happening. It's just mycelial. It's really hard to keep up with because different cities across the country are decriminalizing. But for the most part, it is still illegal, unfortunately, due to laws that were never relevant in the first place. It was psilocybin was classified as a Schedule I drug, even though it meets none of the criteria to be a Schedule I drug. It was very political. And it was Nixon.
I was just going to say, it was back in the Nixon administration that trying to control those hippies.
Yes.
We've had a conversation with someone that came on to talk about MDMA.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of education, a lot of knowledge from that conversation. So I assume it's similar to this. But, okay, we are sitting in a state where it is not currently legal anywhere. Are we hosed? Are we out of luck? Or is there any way that we can bend the rules a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, people, at the end of the day, it's you and a relationship with how you approach it. It's your medicine, it's your spirit, it's religion for some people. I mean, for me, it truly is a spiritual sacrament. It's intricately linked to my spiritual practice. So there are some religious protections. There are churches springing up. Some of them are kind of open source affiliations where you can hold your practice underneath a divine sacrament and spiritual practice. So that's one avenue that people, like, I live in Florida. There are churches here that have set up to practice with mushrooms or ayahuasca in a church setting. When I first started, we taught people to grow mushrooms at home. And so in almost every state, I think 48 out of the 50 states, you can buy a cultivation kit and then you buy spores separately. And there's only 2 states in the country where you can't legally buy psilocybin spores, which is interesting, right?
I'm so curious which states those are.
Idaho and Louisiana, I believe.
Okay, that tracks.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Right?
Right.
Yes. So it's possible to grow, especially for microdosing, once you get the hang of cultivation at home. No, it's not legal in most of the countries, but it's personal use. There are some religious protections, and hopefully it's changing soon.
Right.
And right now we're in this very 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward. And so hopefully soon people will recognize the value.
And in large part, this type of what we're talking about is microdosing, right? That type of the amount of medicine that is involved in microdosing is pretty decriminalized, right? In almost everywhere, because it is such a low dosage. Or am I just wishful thinking?
Yes. I mean, I know hundreds and hundreds of guides all over the country and world at this point. And the only time we've ever heard of someone, quote unquote, getting in trouble, it was almost by accident. It was like they were growing their mushrooms and there was a fire at their house when they were away. And the fire department was like, what is this? What is this? And so it was kind of just accident. So most of this law enforcement is not going out trying to criminalize people, especially for their own healing and their own spiritual practice. So again, I think it's just people are far ahead of where the law is. And we're in such a strange place right now, especially here in the US.
So when we're talking about microdosing, how much is it like? Is it like half a mushroom? Like what? I'm just curious. I'm very visual. Like what does that look like? How much does that look like?
It's small. It's small. And so when people are starting out, if they're growing their own, you get a little scale. You know, you dehydrate the mushrooms and then have a scale. But there's a lot of medicine makers now out there that you have websites, they have religious protections, they have memberships where you can access safe sourcing online and have it shipped to you too. That is already pre-dosed. So that way, when you're first starting out, you're not kind of chopping and guessing and nibbling. Sometimes people are like, I nibbled. And I'm like, don't nibble when you're first starting. You don't want to nibble. Right. Most people, I find the microdosing range in terms of the mushroom itself, it's usually between 100 and 150 milligrams-ish is a general starting point. I tend to work with a lot of people that tend to be pretty open, who are kind of very spiritual people, creative people. I work with a lot of artists, and they tend to need a much lower dose. So a lot of our community starts at like 50 milligrams or 100 milligrams.
Okay. And when you say pre-dose or whatever, is it, do they ship out like a pill or something like that?
It's usually in the form of capsules, just because that's easy to grow your own mushrooms, and then they dehydrate them and grind them up and put them into capsules. Capsules are very common, but there's also tinctures, there's chocolate, there's gummies, there's tablets. Yeah, it depends on the medicine maker.
I like tinctures. That just sounds cool. I feel like there's like an eye drop bottle somewhere, a dropper bottle, and like a pestle, mortar and pestle.
Yeah, I think, in fact, the last time I did a trip in college, we would say the word tincture a lot, I think.
It's just a good word.
Because it's fun to say, the tincture.
And it gives this aura. It's like, a tincture, it's like a capsule, whatever, but a tincture. Little bottles everywhere.
All right. Well, this is I want to temper, but this sounds kind of exciting because it seems like an interesting way to dip your toe into this kind of thing, right? I'm on, like Karen, I'm not really interested in tripping. Unless it's in a very controlled environment and it's for a very spiritual reason. Like I'm not old enough to not need to party anymore, right? But all the benefits that you're talking about are exciting to me because not only does it give you health benefits, but also the spiritual aspect, which is what I'm most focused on right now. It's kind of a cool entryway into something. And there are people out there, excuse me, there are people out there who believe this kind of thing is a crutch, like that spirituality should come from within and only from within. There's no need to bring anything in to make that move any faster. What would you say to those folks that believe that this is just a crutch?
I love that question because it comes up both in the scientific community and from among psychiatrists and psychologists that they're like, this is a shortcut.
Right.
Right. Yeah. We should need something outside of ourselves. And two, in the religious community too, they actually just published a fantastic piece by Michael Pollan around psilocybin experiences from the religious community. They brought together a bunch of like pastors and rabbis and had them trip.
Get out of here.
Seriously.
Wow.
I want to be in that room.
It was
just watching.
It was just published very recently in the last few days, and it was incredible to read, and it was kind of shifted their mindset about practice is very spiritual and very religious. And originally, back in the day, there's great evidence now that psychedelics were part of originally Christianity. It was the original sacrament.
I mean, how else is Moses going to see a burning bush, for God's sakes,
Thank
right?
you.
I mean,
The sea parting.
right.
But it kind of eliminates the middleman of our church structure, if you will, because it is all about your divine connection with source within yourself. And it's the sacrament that helps you access that. So
Right.
I think it's more, a lot of people as they develop spiritually in my program, you come to realize your guides, your angels, whatever your connection is, it was there all along. Mm-hmm. And it was your own fear, often, your own fear, your own grief, your own trauma that kept you from hearing it and connecting to it. And as you work through and you release a lot of the fear and the density, you realize it was there all along. It's just a stronger connection now.
Gotcha.
Oh, I have a question. I'm like raising my hand. I have a question.
Oh, Mr. Carter. Well, I just dated myself in a big way. Never mind.
You really did.
Edit point.
Okay, so how long does this stay in your system, in your, I don't know, blood, urine, like people that work and get random
Drug tests.
Yeah. How does it work?
Great question. It's come up. I've worked with a lot of people who work for the government. Mm-hmm. So they want to know this question. Yeah. And so it's 15 hours.
Oh.
Is what the pharmacists have told me. So whether it's a microdose or a high dose journey, psilocybin clears from your body very, very quickly. And it doesn't get retained in your, say, hair or skin, just like some of other plant medicines.
Score.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So I have heard it say, so first let me back up. I've heard a couple of different things, and I'll address each one separately. First, I've heard that human beings have more in common with fungi than almost any other entity, for lack of a better word.
There's a fungus among us.
So I would assume that there is some sort of brethren there going on that connects us and therefore makes it a little bit more of a connective tissue that makes it, better for us to do this kind of. I'm trying to convince Karen right now, so just help me here.
I've never heard. I've heard pigs. I've heard we have a lot of common with pigs, but I've not heard we have a lot of common with mushrooms. I mean, some people do. They just sit around on a stump.
Yeah. What have you heard about that?
Truth. Yeah. Fungi are amazing. They're amazing. They're so much older than us as a species. They've lived through 5 extinction events over time and carry this wisdom and this knowledge on a cellular level through and across time. So I really think they're here. They're coming back in this moment because they kind of know we need a little help.
Right.
Right. We're kind of in an evolutionary moment right now where we're kind of we're branching off right now, and we're kind of becoming the humans, the next iteration of humans, if you will. And I feel like they can do a lot for us in making us. And Paul Stamets, one of the most famous mycologists, who's kind of been beating the drum of psilocybin for a very long time on his own for a long time. He calls psilocybin the Einstein molecule because it really does make you smarter. It makes you better in every way, physically better. Your instincts get dialed up, your reflexes improve, but also you're smarter and you're more empathetic.
Wow.
And emotionally fluent. And so these are all the qualities that humans really need.
And the looking younger thing.
Tinctures and serums. Yes.
So, and who doesn't love fun guys?
I've been waiting. That actually took you longer than I thought.
I didn't want to interrupt her. All right. So then my second point is I've heard that microdosing, and I think you kind of alluded to it earlier on, where it connects you more. It makes you feel more grounded, more centered. It gets you more in step with who you truly are. I know a lot of people, me included, have a little bit of a social anxiety disorder type of thing happening where I'm very gregarious, I'm very outgoing, but there are times when I feel like, right? Is this something that could help you in that scenario?
Yes.
Oh,
absolutely.
This is like a magic thing.
I shouldn't have to think. Yes.
It's a magic pill.
Anxiety is an interesting one. So what we have found when I'm talking to people for the first time and I'm asking what brings them, almost always when people say, I ask people, when you get out of balance, which way do you go? Do you get sad and inward and kind of isolate yourself, overeat, binge on Netflix? Like, is that you?
Yes.
In those cases, mushrooms are almost always supportive when you tend to go inward. With anxiety, if you get out of balance and you kind of express outward, it depends on the anxiety. So for example, people who tend to lash out at others, road ragers, as people, tend to not. It's interesting, mushrooms don't talk to them as much, which is really interesting to witness, right? Because it's like spirit always has the last say, right? So with anxiety, I notice for certain things, like I've had a lot of people with social anxiety, public speakers, people who speak on a lot of stages, and they're like, I've done this my whole life and I still am so nervous and anxious every single time. It's really good for social anxiety, stage fright, public speaking. It's also really good for specific anxiety. I've had people who can't drive on freeways because they get so anxious driving when it's like heavy traffic or they have to drive in a city. They find themselves driving fine. Right. They don't have that anxiety. So
or spaghettis or long, big, tall bridges or
that. Yes, yes.
And not that I'm not speaking for anybody or anything, but
yes. Well, what the healing happens because underlying that is nervous system dysregulation. So when you regulate your nervous system, Paul Stamets, who I just mentioned, is a great example of this. He had extreme stutter when he was a kid. And he found as a kid, he was like, it would get worse every time it was like a girl I was interested in talking to. It would get way worse. And he did a high dose psilocybin journey when he was a teenager, and his stutter cleared.
Wow.
And for years, he was like, mushrooms healed my stutter. But then he came to realize that mushrooms didn't heal his stutter. Mushrooms healed his underlying anxiety, which was causing the stutter, was just the manifestation of his social anxiety.
Right.
And it cleared.
Wow.
Wow.
Now, what about meditation? Does it help deepen meditation?
Yes. I just actually talked to a client just before, about a lot of people who are regular meditators find themselves getting to a new place in their meditation and they can drop in more quickly.
Oh, I think the only question I have left now, do you have a friends and family discount? Because we're friends now, right? I'm happy to be your family. No, it sounds incredible. I mean, how is it that this is not more widely known?
Because Big Pharma doesn't want us to heal all the way so they can keep selling medicines.
Maybe we should have an
I'm
expert.
sorry. That's just my 2 cents.
You got it.
Oh,
I mean, just a
look at
few
that.
days ago, I, along with 50 of my colleagues, were shut down and banned on Instagram for exactly the reason you just shared. And there's so much positive benefit. There's so much healing. People are really starting to learn about this work and how accessible it is. And just a few days ago, we all got shut down.
Wow. Well, we don't want to be on Instagram anyway.
We're just like mushrooms, though. We just pop back up. We just pop back up.
As long as it's moist and
A little, humid, a little warm.
right. Actually, not long ago, I went to a mushroom farm for the first time. I didn't know
Shiitakes, though.
they were shiitake mushrooms, yeah. But it was astounding.
Yeah.
The sheer will to survive, the will to come. I mean, there was rows upon rows. They were doing them on cedar wood logs. It wasn't in the ground. I don't know what to. I think I kind of expected when someone said, "Okay, you're going to do a shoot at a mushroom farm." I thought we were going to be digging through the dirt, right? Like truffles and things like that. But no, it was a greenhouse, and it was row upon row of these logs, and there was dozens of mushrooms growing out of these logs. It was astounding and gorgeous. And then they gave us a whole bushel of them, and they were amazing.
So good.
They were so clean because when you buy them at the store, you got to wipe off the dirt from the mushrooms. These were completely clean. And I'm not going to give a plug to the mushroom farmer, although I probably should because he'll give us more.
Because it was good.
Well, it's Elijah mushrooms. You look
They
up,
ship.
yeah, look up Elijah, Ellijay mushrooms in Georgia, and they're amazing. But anyway,
Amazing.
yeah, maybe we'll get more mushrooms out of that.
Maybe.
I'll send it to him and see what he says. But
I love it so much. One of the things we're jamming on a lot. So I have a professional group of microdosing guides. There's 40 of us in there from all over the world who do this work as microdosing guides. And lately, we've been really excited about combining different functional mushrooms with psilocybin in stacking. And so learning about how in the future, what I think is going to happen in the future is we're going to start pairing different mushrooms for different health conditions. For example, I credit my seizures healing because I stacked psilocybin with lion's mane together.
oh, got it.
And so anybody that has a nervous system condition, any migraine headaches, TBI, stroke recovery, concussion, anything underlying nervous system, lion's mane and psilocybin together is beautiful. But there's so many other functional mushrooms like turkey tail and cordyceps, chaga, reishi, that when you stack them together, they amplify and enhance each other.
Yeah, and they're using mushrooms in Japan to work with cancer.
Right. Turkey tail specifically, right? That's what I
No,
heard.
it was a different one. But turkey tail, yes, but that's not the one that.
Gotcha. All right.
They've got something else going on.
So a little bit out of the norm question, but let's say someone has something, a physiological something. Would microdosing help to, let's say, I don't know, a tumor or something like that? Would psilocybin or microdosing have any effect on something like that?
They've done testing on turkey tail. I know turkey tail has had a positive impact on tumor cessation and shrinking tumors. I don't know that they've tested psilocybin on tumors specifically yet. There's so much research going on right now, which is amazing, and hopefully it will continue. But they have done research on psilocybin therapy for cancer patients. And I've worked with people moving through a cancer journey with microdosing as well. And they find it really, really supportive all along the arc because it definitely shifts your perspective and you can hold your diagnosis much differently than you were.
Wow, this is incredible stuff. Okay, so I know that you help people go through these kinds of things. So if someone wanted to do that, how what is the journey? Is it an app that you download, or do you reach out to them on a phone call, or how does it work?
Yeah, so our community, we have a global community with over 30 countries. People can come in and it's really accessible. We just structure it like a membership. So it's like a microdosing membership. And so people can come, they get access to safe sourcing, professional resources, and we come together 2 or 3 times a month for live coaching calls. Myself and all the guides in our community are there to answer questions that people have and support them, provide them with resources. Then if they want to go deeper, we all host like 6-week programs and different niche programs for different things. And then I also have a training program to start training other people who want to do this work too as a profession. For the first time, we're starting that this summer.
Wow.
So there's lots of different access points for folks.
And do you provide the microdose tablets or whatever it is to the folks that are members?
Tinctures?
We don't, because that's how we're able to be so public about what we do.
Sure.
The medicine makers and the cultivators tend to stay separate and do things separately. And so some of them, as I said, that have religious protections that enable them to source people within the U.S. So we have a dedicated partner who sources them that way.
Okay.
And people do that directly on their own, but
Okay.
we
But
give
you-
them the resources they need.
So you'd be able to refer someone to someone or something like that, or
Exactly.
okay,
Exactly.
got it. All
Yeah.
right, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
What have we not talked about, Kayse, that you want to make sure that the audience really truly gets from this conversation?
Oh gosh, just how much is possible. I think what has been so eye-opening for people once they start practicing is so much of our Western medical system, what we've always known has been fixing things that are wrong and making things manageable. Right? We've kind of operated from that perspective. And so it's really not about not drinking. It's just not drinking, being sober. It's not really about thriving. It's about not drinking. So for a lot of people, it's just managing pain, managing depression. But once people start microdosing, it shifts you and go, there is so much more that's possible for my life to not just be not or less depressed. I can actually thrive in this life, and I can wake up feeling good and inspired and vibrant every day, which is so different than the mindset that we've been conditioned to believe is healing.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Now, for those that might still have a little bit of fear left in them, is there any reason whatsoever to be afraid of this?
No, there's not. And it's really just, it takes education and comfort. I always invite people, it's very, very common in our community that people just go, it just keeps coming to me. I just see mushrooms everywhere and I'm having dreams about them, and I go to the mall and they're in the window, and I'm just it might be time. And so usually people it's funny, they call you to it and you come across it, and then looking back, it's oh, they found me right at the right time.
Right.
My life was about to go through this massive change. That happens all the time. And you needed the support. You just didn't know it at the time. And so it's one of those things that people get called and they come to it at the right time. It's not a practice that, although I wish I could convince certain people in our government right now to use mushrooms, people, it really thrives and works best when people connect individually and are kind of called to it. So I always invite people in to just learn. You don't have to start practicing. Come into our community and just listen.
Right.
Listen to the experience and learn. And all the people who had a lot of fear or wanted to wait, really after a call or two, just hearing what's possible and the experience is so different than what they thought it was going to be. Most people get really comfortable and ask the same question that you asked, which is why the hell has this been hidden from us
Right.
for so long?
Is there any way to overdose on this stuff?
No.
There's no way to overdose.
No, they've tried. They've tested it. Yeah. Actually, psilocybin was ranked. They ranked, as a professor in the UK, ranked the world's most safest drugs possible. And although I don't like classifying mushrooms as a drug, in this case, it was the fourth safest drug there was. There was literally no way to overdose. It's kind of like eating too many oranges.
Wow. And it's probably better than aspirin this time in this way, because aspirin will actually mess you up. Oh.
In terms of side effects.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
and what was the other question that came up to me when we're asking that overdosing? Is it habit forming?
No. So this is another thing. I love this question because even in the field today, there's still a lot of misconception around that. And so a lot of us are taught to take breaks, so we don't develop tolerance to the mushrooms. And you don't want it to become habit forming. But I've witnessed over my years supporting people that over time, when people come back to microdosing, is not only is it not habit forming, they require a much lower dose. because they're more dialed into the medicine. They have less density. They've worked through some layers at places they did. So it's kind of the opposite of habit forming. I think if people do develop, humans will binge on anything.
That's true.
Right? Cookies, movies, you name it.
Yeah.
So I find sometimes when people abuse mushrooms, it's more our human tendency to abuse than it is a quality of the mushrooms that is addicting anybody.
Got it. Yeah.
Do you think this could help with all, we keep hearing in the news so much about the opioid situation that we have. Do you think this could help people get off or release that addiction to opioids?
I think mushrooms, I'm biased. It's what I do.
Yeah.
But I think mushrooms, particularly microdosing, can prevent so many addictions in the first place from happening, because almost all addictions is a disconnection from self and other. Psilocybin is such a relational medicine. It changes your relationship to yourself. It helps people love themselves again. It helps people love other people again. And you're less likely to fall into addictions if you have that healthy relationship to self in the first place. In terms of active addictions, yes, there's a couple guides in our community who specialize in working with people with addictions of all types. It's really good to break addictions, because addictions are tied to that ruminating, looping mind. And resetting your nervous system can really, really help that. And then there's some bigger medicines for sure that are showing remarkable pattern breaking, addiction breaking. Ibogaine, for example, is becoming more widely known. That is a shrub from Africa that is tremendously effective, for also illegal right now in the United States. Hopefully that will be changing too.
Right.
But Ibogaine is deeply effective for opioid addiction.
Cool.
Wow.
I love its sister medicine for baldness. Rogaine. Sorry. Anyway,
Can mushroom microdosing help with that?
yes, it'll just
Can it
deepen.
improve jokes?
It'll deepen the humor factor. Now, what I love the most about this is the personal factor. Is the getting in touch with yourself, right? Getting more in tune with who you are, the centeredness, the balance of it. In my journey currently, I'm in a very big look inward phase where I'm looking inside, seeing things I haven't seen in a long time, and working through them and moving forward a better person. And I think something like this might help me to do something like that. So it's something I've been curious about for a long time. I think you might have sold me. I just have to get the wife on board, and then we'll be good. So. All right.
Love it.
Well,
Love it.
if someone wanted to join your community or reach out to ask you any questions or anything like that, what's the best way for someone to do that?
I'm super accessible online because my name is spelled so weird. So I'm easy to find me. I'm on all the platforms that allow me to be there.
No Instagram. We won't be putting that in the show notes.
My new Instagram is Kayse.Gehret.
Oh.
Yes, I'm
That's
back.
a new mushroom.
Okay, we might put that one up. We'll see.
Yes, but Microdosing for Healing is honestly the best place to go. That's kind of our home base website, and that has so many free resources, many podcast episodes. So that's another thing people say oftentimes is they binge on the podcast episodes and really get to hear and learn from a variety of people, different microdosing perspectives to get comfy. So that's there for people. And then we have lots of options and access points from there for folks.
Excellent. Well, we're going to go ahead and add direct links to your platform and your socials if we are able to find them in our show notes. All you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com, go to her episode page. You'll see those links in there, so it's easy for you to connect. Kayse, this has been eye-opening and mind-expanding.
Yes.
I think I said something like that in the beginning of the episode.
I think you might have.
Wow. Wow. I am psychic. Thank you so much for coming on and clearing a lot of misconceptions up for us and helping us to showcase another avenue that's available to people that maybe people weren't so sure about. So thank you for your expertise.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Hey there, I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
Welcome back to another exciting, eye-popping
Eye popping?
consciousness expanding
Maybe eye-opening.
episode of the
my eyes
Skeptic
could be
Metaphysicians. Let's try that again. All right. Hey there, I'm Will.
And I'm
No.
that's popping my eyes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you two on mushrooms?
Not yet, but we can talk later. All
All right.
right, here we go.